RAF Skipton-on-Swale, the Bomber Crew and Black Labrador. I still don't remember or why I made the decision to ride down to former RAF Skipton-on-Swale in North Yorkshire. It certainly wasn't one of the very haunted airfields that I knew about, but I had a compulsion to go, and I'm glad that I did. This was after the publication of my third book on haunted airfields, and so the encounters we had there never went into that volume. In August 1942, RAF Skipton-on-Swale opened into No. 4 Group as a satellite of Leeming. No. 420 RCAF Squadron transferred from No. 1 Group and RAF Waddington on the 7th of August with their Wellingtons. Their tenure was brief, for on the 15th of October they were moved to Middleton St George, reputedly because of the incomplete state of Skipton's camp. Skipton was transferred on the 1st of January 1943 to the newly formed No. 6 Royal Canadian Air Force Group, and No. 432 Squadron formed there, equipped with Wellington 10s on the 1st of May. They began bombing missions on the 23rd to 24th of May, when 15 Wellingtons were assigned the target of Dortmund. No. 432 Squadron was moved to RAF Eastmoor on the 18th of September. No. 433 Squadron was formed at Skipton on the 25th of September, equipped with Halifax 3s, and was joined on the 6th of November by No. 424 Squadron, which arrived from Hanny East Landing Field in North Africa to re-equip with Halifax 3s. No. 433 Squadron began operations with 3 aircraft laying mines off the Frisian Islands on the night of the 23rd to 24th of January, and No. 424 Squadron made their first raid from Skipton with their Halifaxes on the night of the 15th to 16th of February, when they flew to Berlin. Skipton was designated on the 1st of May as No. 63 Base Substation, with the parent station at Leeming. In January 1945, both No. 433 and No. 424 Squadrons converted to Lancasters and continued flying the bombing campaign. April saw both squadrons fly their final missions by repatriating prisoners of war from Europe, and after this, the wind down was rapid. On the 30th of August, No. 63 Base was disbanded, and Skipton was transferred to No. 1 Group. Shortly thereafter, both No. 433 and 424 Squadrons were disbanded. The last operational squadron at the airfield was to be No. 300 Polish Squadron, which arrived from Faldingworth on the 25th of November 1946 with their Lancasters, and staying until their disbandment on January 2nd, 1947. Soon after this, the airfield was closed, being sold off sometime in the next 2 decades. The control tower is currently derelict, and the hangars have been destroyed. The runways were the location for Ross Foods poultry huts. The fire and trailer sheds and a few other buildings, including the parachute store and the squash court, still stand. In total, 98 aircraft and crews were lost in operations flown from this station. This comprised 21 Wellingtons, 66 Halifaxes and 11 Lancasters. Apart from the sounds of aircraft engines that have been reported to me, heard at night from the old deserted airfield, there are other accounts from Skipton that are worth recounting. Kevin Desmond wrote in his Aviation Ghosts 1988 of a story which a lady had told him several days prior to his visit to that airfield. In 1950s, the family was living in one of the Nissen huts at old Skipton-on-Swale airfield, and her father would drive his van from there to a nearby bakery. One day, an airman on a bicycle came out of nowhere in front of his van as he drove on the concrete road of the airfield and was knocked down. Her father got out of the van, only to find that the airman and his bicycle had both vanished. Bruce Barrymore Halpenny, writing in his Ghost Stations Volume 1, relates the story of leading aircraftsman Drummond, who was one of a party of 10 detached from RAF Catterick to RAF Skipton-on-Swale, with orders to clean up the camp in early 1946. They took up residence in one of the dozens of empty billets, thinking what an easy duty they had landed. Locals informed them of their visits to the local public house that the airfield was haunted. On the night of the first full moon of their stay at the station, Drummond left the billet and went to wash and shave in the toilet block, where he maintained that he could not help but feel the eeriness of the place. As he entered the toilet block and closed the door behind him, he had a feeling that he was not alone, and glancing around the empty building, he noticed that all the toilet doors were closed. He remembers, "As I lathered my face, I noticed through the mirror that the toilet block door was slowly opening, and I turned to see who was coming in. The door opened, fully, but no one entered. Then I felt a slight breeze past me, and then suddenly 3 toilet doors opened and closed with a bang. For a few seconds he stood dumbfounded, then gathering up his shaving kit, he ran back to the billet. At first he thought it was his mates having a joke, but they had not left the billet. Later that same night, Drummond and Corporal Robinson were on night patrol, on foot around the airfield. As they passed the large hangar, they heard sounds like somebody crying. Then a man's voice was heard, moaning as if in great pain. Both men stopped, looked at each other, and listened. The full moon lit up the airfield and the hangar, but all was silent, and then the crying and moaning started again. Then both men entered the hangar, and immediately heard more voices. Drummond switched on some lights and shouted, "Anybody there?" This act stopped the voices. They thoroughly searched the hangar, but it was empty. Then, while standing in the doorway as they left, they had the distinct feeling of being watched. Over the next few weeks, there were many more ghostly happenings, with a build-up to the full moon, when again many sounds were heard. Mr. Barrymore Halpenny added that duty at Skipton-on-Swale proved too much of an ordeal for 4 airmen, and they deserted because they could not stand the ghostly atmosphere. Mark Newman and I rode down to Skipton-on-Swale, meeting up at the memorial on the green in the village, riding onto the airfield past the old squash court, and then the parachute store, which I stopped at and took some photographs. We eventually came onto the perimeter track and parked up near the old watch office. This was clearly marked as off-limits, so we obeyed the instructions not to enter, and instead spent a little time walking around the outside and taking photographs of the visible parts of the inside. Back at the bikes, and after a coffee, we started a PSB7 session, which it must be said had a very shaky start. The voice recorder turned itself off 3 times, before I finally held it, whereupon it functioned normally. There seems no reason for this, as the batteries had been put in that morning. The recordings from these sessions have all a clicking noise on, similar to that produced by a pull cord switch in a bathroom. The cause of this is unknown. The batteries were all checked at home after the investigation, and all found to be fully charged. The only definitive contact that I made was the sighting of a black Labrador, who waddled in that Labrador way along the side of the watch office from the runway beyond, and sat down at the right near the door and looked at us in that questioning sort of way. There were others around, of course. There always are on airfields, moving about, but none really came to make their presence known. The recording of the Spirit Box session, when later analysed and cleaned, proved most interesting. Indeed, it seemed as though we had a variety of RAF types around us, chatting away, but seemingly interacting with each other, and us. When one said, "I feel sick," another replied, "I vote we should look after him," in a Birmingham accent. And then someone in a Norfolk accent says Norfolk. I love getting accents. But then there were also sentient responses to my questions, and in answer to what aircraft was stationed there, came back the clear reply, Wellington, which is of course correct. At the end of the session, I managed to record the dog, who I saw barking for us. Then, he got up, turned around, and started walking back the way he'd come, with tail lazily wagging, and he just faded away.